KJ hit us up from Asheville, North Carolina. He said, have you seen this Rich Rodriguez thing with him banning players from TikTok? I told you it was a big deal. He said, it seems like an old man who isn't with the times, and it may lose him some guys if you're asking me. KJ, you're probably partially right here. Maybe this will lose Rich Rodriguez as a player. Let me ask you something, KJ. You are the head coach at West Virginia. You walk up to a kid and say, I want you to start at outside linebacker for me. You check all the boxes. You got all the critical factors and traits we want. One ask, don't dance on TikTok. And that kid says, Coach, that's a deal breaker for me. I'm out. Was that kid really going to put his face in the fan for you? Do you really think he was going over the cliff for you? Now, that's a theoretical. I can't prove a counterfactual. I don't know, but I'm just guessing, KJ, that if you were in the head coach's chair at West Virginia or anywhere else, that you may end up adopting a similar policy. So, Rich, if you don't know what we're talking about, shame on me for not spelling out the details. Luckily, we do have video. So, Rich Rodriguez walks into West Virginia. Obviously, he's there because the previous guy got fired. Now, while I'm a fan of Neil Brown, generically, anytime a coach gets fired, the new guy's going to come in and he sees some things he doesn't like. Things were allowed to be a certain way, and he wants to put a fresh coat of paint on. It's been done a million times before. Rich Rodriguez is just 1,000,001. However, Rich Rod probably a generation ago when he was in Morgantown never imagined that he would take a hardline stance on something like TikTok, mainly because that was the sound a clock made. It was not an app on a cell phone that really consumed a lot of his players' lives. So the other day he was asked about this. You're going to have a ban on this stuff? You're going to take a social media approach? Coach, what's your opinion on this? We tried to shave this soundbite down, but we couldn't. It's like Colin, a minute and a half long. We tried to shave it down, but he just got on a heater. And when guys get on heaters, you get out of the way, keep your mouth shut, and you let him talk. So here is Rich Rodriguez on sort of a quasi-TikTok ban and the reason why.
They're going to be on it, so it's not. I'm not banning them from. I just banning them from dancing on it. You know, it's like, don't look. We try to have a hard edge, whatever, and you're in there, you know, in your tights, you know, dancing on TikTok. Ain't quite the image of our program that I want. But I told the team today, I said everything today is about trying to make everybody individual. It's all about the individual. It's all about the individual. And I said football is one of the last things that was got to be more about the team than the individual. And so I banned dancing on TikTok. I guess I did that. But anything that doesn't look like our program should look, you know, I mean, I think it's just like, come on. You know, really? I mean, and I'm allowed to do that, I guess. I can have rules. Now, when they, like I said, 20 years from now, they want to be sitting in their pajamas in the basement, eating Cheetos and watching TikTok or whatever the hell, they can go at it. Smoking cannabis, whatever. I mean, knock yourself out. But, you know, the hope their focus can be on winning football games. You know, how about let's win the football game and not worry about winning the TikTok.
You hear that, Jeff and Steve and Michael? I'm just randomly guessing names of people listening to the show. Stop worrying about winning TikTok, the TikTok. Stop worrying about winning it. Listen, let me cut in really quick and ask, look, prayer hands, please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And if you think you're subscribed, check and make sure. Over 50% of you aren't. It's free, it doesn't sign you up for anything, and it helps us keep the show free, college football year-round, the way God intended it. All right, back to the clip. Whether you agree with his tactics or not, there is a thing in life. There is a line in society. We call it the DGAF line. It is an acronym. You can ask your older brother what it stands for. But wherever the DGAF line is, Rich Rodriguez is well beyond it. So when it comes to gaffing, he D. And therefore he can stand at a podium and say these kinds of things. And a lot of his peers are thinking it, they just don't want to take that stance. However, I'm going to get pushback on this. I know, because I already focus grouped this. Talked to a couple of our younger viewers today in the Pate State community, and sometimes I bounce this off of you guys. I said, hey, what do you think about this? Oh, I hate it. Why do you hate it? Well, he's not letting his players live their lives. Obviously, I could go with the follow-up of, do you really think you're going to walk into the workplace and maintain all of your rights that you would out on the street? Do you really think that there's any world that exists where you go and get paid in exchange for a service, and there aren't certain conditions you have to meet, there aren't certain rights you have to give up in the workplace? I could go that route, but it makes you sound 65 years old. So, not that there's anything wrong with being 65, but we don't believe in age on this show. And so for that reason, among others, I'm not even going to go down that route. I'm going to take that argument, which would be sound, and I'm going to put it on the shelf because I want to go this route instead. Because another one of my focus groupies said, but it's just a reflection of society. Guys want to be active on whatever the most popular platform is, and that happens to be TikTok, and guys just want to be active on there. It's just a reflection of society. I listen to that, and you're not wrong. However, I do have follow-ups, if you'll grant me. And I just want to ask you this. This person happened to be a Tennessee fan, so I'll ask you about Tennessee, but you could just as easily apply this to Morgantown, West Virginia. Do you really want your football players blending in with society? Do we ever look back on championship teams and the members of those teams and say, boy, when they walked around campus, you couldn't even tell the difference? When I saw Devontae Smith walk in the quad in Tuscaloosa, he acted just like everyone else. You know, Jamar Chase, when he was at LSU, he just blended in. You never would have known he was a superstar receiver. Joe Burrow on that same team, you couldn't even pick him out of a lineup. No, you want him to be the exception to the rule because you want greatness. That's really what you want your team to achieve. Team, notice, there's that key word. There's that key word that Rich Rodriguez was focused on, their team over individual. Now, again, I sound like a youth camp counselor on this, and that's okay because those guys are right a lot of the times, as I figured out early on in life in Pine Mountain, Georgia. You want your guys to be different. I'm just speaking personally here. At Pate State, I don't want my roster acting like everyone else on campus because most other people on campus aren't qualified to do what we're trying to do, and that's win football games. And this is a very violent sport. I know we've tried to touch it up for public consumption, and we try and speak about it with really rounded edges, but it's rough, and you need rough people to be playing it. Physically and mentally, you need to be there. One of the most underreported factors in college football these days is how little trouble players get in. I'm going somewhere with this. A bunch of coaches have talked about this, none of them on the record. We kind of got Elko to talk about it last week, but I swear to you I've had this conversation with no less than 30 coaches, assistants, head coaches. They say, our guys don't get in trouble. It's stunning. It fell off a cliff. Off the field issues used to be a year-round headline grabber. No matter which program it was, outside of the Ivies or the service academies, if you were any good, and sometimes even if you were terrible, you had guys getting in trouble off the field. Think to yourself, outside of a few exceptions to the rule, I don't need you throwing them at me, where's the proliferation of negative headlines? And so you can believe either one, the media's been bought and paid for. I know you all have your takes on that. Or number two, those headlines aren't around as much because the trouble isn't happening as much. Well, I know for a fact it is the latter. Even if some of the former is true, the latter is the case. Hardly anyone's getting in trouble off the field. What changed? Well, what changed is one of the curious little byproducts of this generation where players are getting paid money and they know because of this piece of technology that they have in their back pocket, everyone's watching them, is no one wants to take a chance. No one wants to do anything that would cast them in a bad light. You may look at that and say, well, that sounds like a good thing. It's a very good thing. Of course it's a very good thing. It's almost a great thing, but I'll tell you, sometimes even really, really good things have a side effect, an unintended consequence. And Rich Rodriguez is probably experiencing a little bit of this, but he's not the only one. You got a lot of coaches out there. They will never say this publicly. This does not pass the PR department, but they're looking and they're saying, you know, my guys lack an edge. And I think it's because they're too nice. We've got too many choir boys on this team. And so for so long, we preached personal responsibility and accountability. And finally, the message looks to have been received. Maybe not necessarily because you preached it, but for whatever the reasons are, external factors included, these guys are acting exactly how we always wanted them to act. We hardly have any issues. I hardly have to release any statements about player arrests or lack of accountability. However, I'm noticing a little timidity, a little trepidation. Not as many vocal leaders here, not as many alphas in the room. And, you know, back in the day when we had guys getting in a little bit more trouble, it seems to have not been as big of an issue. This is a conversation happening in a lot of places. Not all places, but a lot of places. I just wonder from afar if he's looking at that a little bit. If he's looking at saying, I got more guys willing to dance on TikTok than I do willing to put their nose in this briar patch here on third down and short. I'm not a big fan of this. So if we can't get one, I certainly don't want to be dealing with the other. Now the trade-off here, because it's all about trade, the trade-off here is Rich Rodriguez better understand that if these guys acquiesce to this request or demand, then you're going to have to give them something. I've never seen Rich Rodriguez dance. I have no clue how good a dancer he is. But look, if Mac Brown can do it, you can do it. You need to give those guys that at least. When you win games this fall, you need to be prepared to completely and utterly humiliate yourself in that locker room by doing something that you will not let them do on various social media platforms. It's only right.